The woods stood silent. A wall of fog hugged the ancient trees. The air was heavy with moisture. It clung to the skin like a shroud. A twig snapped in the distance. A low growl echoed through the fog. This was the forest of mirrors. The trees were gnarled and twisted, their branches heavy with age. They reached up towards the sky like skeletal fingers. The forest floor was littered with decaying leaves and fallen branches. A thick layer of fog clung to the ground. It obscured everything beyond a few feet. Strange whispers seemed to emanate from the fog itself. The only light came from the faint glow of the moon. It filtered through the dense canopy. It cast long, eerie shadows that danced and swayed in the mist. An unsettling silence hung over the woods, broken only by the occasional snap of a twig or the rustle of leaves. It was as if the forest itself were holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. A cold wind rustled the leaves. The trees groaned. The fog swirled, momentarily revealing a glimpse of something unnatural, a mirror. It hung on a nearby tree. Its surface was cloudy and tarnished, yet it seemed to pulse with a faint inner light. This was no ordinary forest. This was a place of secrets, and it was waiting. The forest had a dark history. Locals whispered tales of a sorcerer named Malcolm Wright. He had lived in the 18th century. Wright had been obsessed with mirrors. He believed they were portals to other worlds. He built a cabin deep within the woods. There he conducted his twisted experiments.
I sought nothing less than to unlock the secrets of the universe. I believed that mirrors held the key to achieving my goal. I spent years studying their properties. I consulted ancient texts. I even performed dark rituals in an attempt to commune with entities from beyond our reality. My experiments grew more and more dangerous. I sought to bind spirits to my will. I used them to power my spells. My arrogance knew no bounds. I tampered with forces I did not understand.
The consequences were catastrophic. One fateful night, a surge of energy ripped through his cabin. It consumed everything in a blinding flash of light. The forest surrounding his cabin was warped and twisted. Strange energies seeped into the very land itself. The mirrors, once mere objects, became conduits to something sinister. Years passed. The forest remained untouched. It became a place of fear and superstition. One day, a group of friends decided to hike the old trails, unafraid of the local legends. As they hiked deeper, the air grew colder. The fog thickened. An unnatural silence descended upon them. They couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. They stumbled upon the first mirror. It hung from a gnarled oak tree. Its surface was cloudy and tarnished. As they approached, they noticed something strange. Their reflections moved independently. They seemed to mock the friends. Their smiles were too wide. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light.
Emily's reflection reached out. It beckoned her closer. Emily gasped. She stumbled back in horror.
What the hell was that? Did you see that?
The others laughed nervously. They tried to rationalize what they had seen, but a seed of doubt had been planted in their minds. They continued on. The mirrors grew more frequent. They hung from every tree. Some were small and handheld. Others were massive and ornate. They reflected the friends' fear. They magnified their doubts.
Come on, guys, it's just our imaginations. Let's keep moving.
David, the skeptic, started to crack jokes. He tried to lighten the mood, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The reflections in the mirrors grew more and more bizarre. They twisted and contorted. They whispered promises of power and knowledge. Then David was gone. One moment he was there, the next he vanished. They searched frantically for him. They called his name, but there was no answer. Only the sound of their own panicked breathing and the faint, eerie whispers emanating from the mirrors.
A blood-curdling scream pierced the silence.
It was David.
They followed the sound. It led them to a clearing. In the center stood a towering oak. A massive mirror hung from its branches. David's face was pressed against its surface. He was trapped.
His reflection stared back at them, but it was no longer David.
It was something else, something grotesque. Its eyes glowed with malevolent glee. Its teeth were bared in a cruel grin. It reached out from the mirror. Its long, sharp nails raked at David's face.
The others rushed to help him, but they were too late.
The creature pulled David through the mirror. He disappeared into the shimmering surface. The mirror returned to normal. It reflected nothing but their own horrified faces. Panic set in. They had to get out of the forest. Now.
But the forest had other plans.
The trees seemed to close in around them. The fog thickened. It became a blinding wall of white. The mirrors began to glow. They pulsed with an eerie light. Strange creatures emerged from their depths. They were tall and slender. Their skin was as white as bone. Their eyes glowed with an unnatural light. They were the denizens of the mirrors, and they were hungry. The creatures hissed at them in a language they couldn't understand.
They circled us. Their movements were unnervingly fluid.
It was like they were toying with us, herding us deeper into the forest.
The friends tried to run, but the creatures were too fast. They cut off their escape. The forest itself seemed to be working against them.
The trees, they shifted their positions. The paths we had taken disappeared.
They were trapped in a labyrinth of glass and shadows. They were surrounded. The creatures closed in, their glowing eyes boring into them. The friends huddled together, their backs against a massive oak tree. They knew they couldn't fight their way out. They were outnumbered, outmatched.
Emily, the level-headed one, took charge. She knew we needed a plan, and fast.
She remembered something her grandmother used to say about mirrors. They reflect what is shown to them, but they can also be used to show the way.
She grabbed a shard of broken mirror from the ground. She held it up to one of the creatures. She focused all her will. She projected an image of her grandmother's house, a place of safety. For a moment, the creature hesitated. It seemed confused. The image of the house flickered in its glowing eyes. It took a step back. It hissed at the other creatures. They parted slightly, creating a narrow path through the trees.
Emily didn't hesitate. She pushed past the creatures.
She beckoned us to follow. We ran. We didn't look back.
They didn't stop running until they burst out of the forest. They collapsed on the soft grass. They gasped for air. They were safe. For now. But they knew they would never forget the horrors they had witnessed. They had looked into the abyss, and the abyss had looked back. They never spoke of what they had seen. They tried to move on with their lives, but the forest had left its mark on them. They were changed.
Emily was haunted by nightmares. She saw David's face trapped in the mirror. She heard the creatures' whispers. They echoed in her dreams.
Mark, the athletic one, became withdrawn and introspective. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was following him. He saw shadows moving in his peripheral vision. He heard whispers in the wind.
Jessica, the quiet one, retreated into herself. She refused to be alone. She claimed she could still feel the creature's eyes on her, watching her, waiting.
Only David was truly gone, lost to the forest of mirrors. The forest remained, shrouded in fog and shadow. The mirrors still hung from the trees. They watched and waited. They whispered promises of power and knowledge. They beckoned the curious and the foolish. They were portals to other worlds, worlds of both wonder and horror. The forest of mirrors had claimed its victims, but it wasn't finished. It would continue to lure unsuspecting souls into its depths. It would continue to feed on their fear. It would continue to reflect their darkest desires. The mirrors were calling, and they would not be denied.